All right, starting broadcast now.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone to Call Camp Quantifying Pain. This is an interesting one. This is a fun one. We had a lot of fun putting it together. I want to say to our friends at ZocDoc, we're sorry that they couldn't make it. They had a last-minute conflict, and unfortunately we had some really good calls teed up with them. Given their last-minute conflict, we were fortunate to bring on Lauren Duffy, who will be joining us today. And Lauren, you want to say hello?
Hello, everyone. Happy to be here.
Lauren's the Director of Sales at Curvature. We'll go back into her, talk about her background here in a minute. Today, we're going to laser focus on the conversation about pain, quantifying pain, challenges, problems, but try to take that and turn it into something that's more concrete rather than just uncovering that someone has a priority. What does that priority mean for them? What does that mean for the business? And we're going to get very specific around that, and then also talk about pain versus gain. I want to thank our sponsors as well today. One was Enterprise Sales Podcast. Noah Goldman, who has been a absolute freak of nature when it comes to how fast he cranks out these podcasts. Unbelievable, the content he's spitting out. And I think his website is just dead on, the world's best sales knowledge, period. Outstanding free sales podcasts. I really encourage you to check them out. He interviewed me last week on Wednesday, and then he got it out on Thursday. I've never seen anything like that before. We got all the post-production and editing done. So a really excellent podcast series for you to check out that's going to be generating a lot of buzz in 2017. And I'm also joined by my friend David Dulaney, who just started an organization called Rainmakers. David, do you want to explain a little bit about Rainmakers?
Yeah, Steve, thanks so much. Good morning, everybody. Glad we could join you guys today. Just a quick download on Rainmakers. The idea here is to create an exclusive platform for top-performing salespeople, and that's just like most of the people on the call today, Steve. Once you get on the platform, you can set your parameters around the type of opportunities that you'd like to see as far as job opportunities, the amount of money that you want to make, and the type of networking that you want to do with other A players that are on the network. So we're in beta right now. I believe Steve's got a slide there. There you go. Of how you can apply to get on Rainmakers, and we'll be launching in the spring. So hope to see everybody over on the platform. And Steve, thanks for letting us play today.
Yeah, no, thanks for helping us promote Call Camp. And if anyone's listening and saying, hey, we would love to help promote Call Camp and we'd like to get a shout out too, please let me know. We're building a movement here. You've heard me say it before. It's a movement of people that are sick and tired of all these sales trainers and consultants telling them, oh, you should do this or you should do that, or back in my war stories, back in my day in the 80s when I was selling photocopiers, here's how we sold. BS. We don't like that here at Call Camp. What we like is what's working now, what's current, what's present, what's backed by research, and what actually works in the real world. And there's no better way to learn that than to go and listen to the actual recording and hear that game tape, if you will. So Lauren Duffy, Sales Director at Curvature. She is a woman who's done a variety of things in her career, managed a sales team, sales operations. She was just doing some territory planning before we got started. Lauren, just tell a little bit about Curvature, your sales organization there, and give a little background as to our conversation that we're going to listen to today.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So Curvature is a global IT solutions provider, and we're focused on the hardware and the maintenance space. We have two groups of sales folks. We have our very tenured salespeople who have been here for 15 to 20 years, and they know one of our singular products inside and out. But we've launched 3 new product lines, and as a result of that, we are trying to upskill our historical sales force, and we're also growing a junior sales force. So right now I'm building a team of 15 net new acquisition reps. And part of why Steve and I began to have this conversation is I'm inundated, much like all of you, all the time with a variety of tool options, right? My tool can help you send out more emails. My tool can help you reach more decision makers. And what's lost in this technology and this SaaS model is really teaching the art of selling, those softer skills that can only be done through coaching and reinforcement and enablement. And here at Curvature, that's what we're really focused on right now. We have a fantastic tool suite, but we're missing that coaching component.
And just so everyone knows, Lauren has not yet bought Exec Vision, but I'm working on her. So
that's right.
The funny thing is when ZocDoc bailed today, I said, oh boy, what am I going to do? And I went into Exec Vision, surprise, surprise, and I did a search for all the calls where I myself have attempted to quantify pain, and one of the first ones that came up was with Lauren. So she's going to be coaching me today, and I'm in the hot seat. So Lauren, take it easy on me, okay?
Yeah, will do.
All right, good. So here's the problem that we're addressing. There's this lack of visibility into business conversations that happens across all of these different areas in an organization. If you think about it, the one common denominator is the conversation. That's why you registered for this. If you're on this, it's because you want to have better conversations or because your boss wants to help you improve your conversations. And oh, guess what? Just like watching football game film, football players, you're never done. You're never done. And clearly, as you know, if the Alabama fans are out there listening, maybe if they had watched a few more of those plays that Clemson was running at the end of the game, they might have just won the national title, right? So, and don't get me wrong, they probably watch a lot. There is this big pile of unusable call recordings. So you say, hey, Steve, well, why not just use recordings of our sales calls and go to meetings and our dialers and things like that? Well, here's why. Because there's all this stuff you can't do with that big pile of unusable call recordings. It's just like back in the day in the NFL, they used to have those reel-to-reel tapes where you would have to pour over hours and hours and hours. No one has time to do that, to try to figure out what's going on. You got to get right to the stuff that matters very quickly. You've got to get right to the areas where you can have improvement. So this leads to our topic, pain versus gain. Pain versus gain. Now, my business partner, our CEO, he frequently brings up, and it's an interesting conversation, how I tend to sell more around challenges, frustrations, pain points. I've heard along the way that there has been research. I have yet to see the research myself, but I've heard from other sales guru talking head people that there's research that shows people are twice as motivated by pain as they are by gain, as they are by finding pleasure. A guy named Tom Freeze has a book called Question-Based Selling. In that book, Question-Based Selling, which I encourage you to read, he talks about German Shepherds and gold stars. Everyone's either running away from a German Shepherd or they're running towards a gold star. They're doing one or the other. It's just kind of a binary thing that happens along the way. Lauren, any comments on, in your business, how you teach your sales force? You teach it on pain, you teach it on gain. And while you answer that, I'm going to open a poll, because what I'd like to have is everyone, I'd like you to tell us, what are you doing more of? Are you selling against pain or gain? So the poll should be open. So when you sell, do you have a better result when you sell around pain or around gain? Are you more like David Stillman, the CEO of the business, or are you more like Steve Richard? I'm more of the pain guy. He's more of the gain guy. So Lauren, in your world, what do you do?
Yeah, we actually had a huge debate over this when we brought in CEB for the Challenger sale. Just trying to figure out how do we want to approach our customers and what are we helping them with. And at the end of the day, after a much heated debate, we landed on pain, the pain of our customers having to deal with the OEMs, with the Dells, the HPs, the Ciscos of the world, and that there is an alternative. So we're trying to dig into that pain, but that always is dependent upon how closely they're tied to those OEMs. So it's still, even today, even though we went down the pain route, it's still an interesting topic in conversation, because if we go down our sales path and methodology just looking for pain, sometimes that doesn't always fit the bill. We sometimes have to look for that gain. But more often than not, it really is searching for that pain within the opportunity.
You know, and this is an interesting thing. The people who do the assessments, by the way, if you haven't voted yet, vote. I'm going to close the poll in a second here, but we look like we got a stable area here, or a stable level. The interesting thing is the assessment. The people who know personality profile types, of those sorts of things, Lauren, they'll tell us that every individual is different. So sometimes we think about a company as being this, like, you know, monolithic entity like the board or something, but in reality, a company is just a whole bunch of different people that are human beings, and some of them are going to be very much motivated by pain, and some of them are going to be motivated by gain. But that's hard to do as a salesperson, right? Like, how do you, as a salesperson, try to figure out which one it is?
It's really hard, and really only the true tenured reps are able to do that. That just comes from multiple selling motions. But we advise that our new sellers and anybody that's selling a new product, or if you're new to curvature, we're going to have you lead with pain, because that's how we've written all of our documentation, our supporting documents, as well as our PowerPoint. So that's what we're having folks lead with.
And that's an interesting, I mean, this is something we didn't talk about preparing for this, but I love this idea of all of everything else in your organizational strategy has to be built around whether or not you're going pain or whether or not you're going gain, because otherwise you're going to have messaging. Yeah.
Yeah, you have confusing messaging and you have confused sales reps. So don't know if one's better than the other. I'll be interested to see the polls.
So 71%, yeah, 71% of people said pain, 25% said gain, and then 4% of people said other, and then we encouraged you to chat that with us. Let me just look at that real quick in the chat box and see. So if you said other, I don't see anything in the chat box, so if you said other, please write in, and we'll take a look at those at some point in this webinar, in this webcast. Write in what is the thing that you do. We couldn't figure out what the other would be, but inevitably somebody out there is doing that. One more thing before we move on. In the GoToWebinar panel on the right, I've included some handouts for you. The Ultimate Coaching Playbook, which pulls together the best of hundreds of organizations, research from places like Corporate Executive Board, Forrester, Gartner, Serious Decisions, people like that, as well as a primer on call recording logs. So there are some really good handouts that you can go and grab from the right-hand side. All right, let's get back to it. Hang on here. I think I got to close the poll. All right. And Lauren, can you see my screen again?
I sure can.
All right, so now that we're talking about quantifying pain, give us some tips, or just kind of pain in general, uncovering and developing pain. Give us some tips of things that you're teaching there.
Yeah, so there's two things really that we're reinforcing with all of our new hires. And number one is, before you even get to pain, what we found is that the new reps aren't spending time at the beginning of the call. This sounds so simple, but it's missed all the time, which is clarifying the individual or individuals who are on the call, clarifying their role. We make a lot of assumptions based on the tools that we have available, based on what I see. We use DiscoverOrg and LinkedIn Sales Navigator and obviously our CRM system. But people's roles change constantly and their strategic priorities change. So we highly encourage our reps at the beginning of every call to really clarify that, so we can best be suited to unearth that pain and know what path to go down. And then the second one that we're focused on right now is, don't assume that your prospect knows their number one pain. That's actually an assumption that's made a lot here at Curvature. And we're just assuming that everybody has pain, or that they know what it is. And part of what we're teaching through our sales enablement efforts is that's now part of your job as a salesperson. Just don't assume that they know what it is. You might have to help them figure that out as you go through your selling motions.
Love it, Lauren. Thank you. I've had some people type in some things in the questions area, so I'm going to read those out to make this more of an interactive experience. Kevin Asher, who's actually one of our channel partners at ExecVision, Kevin Asher with Acoustic Selling in Seattle, said, pain mostly, only executives care about gain. That's interesting, right? So how does that relate if someone is at the upper echelons of their career, and is it more about opportunity and gain versus pain? it's an interesting idea, Kevin. Thank you. And then Lindsay said, we offer non-bank capital using people, asking people what they would accomplish with additional capital is a better way to start a conversation than asking them what they can't achieve because they don't have the money. Interesting. Okay, so that's a gain, but it's a different flavor of gain, I guess, than what we were talking about before. So thanks for that, Lindsay. All right, going back in here. So, Lauren, can you still see my screen?
I can.
The forgetting curve is the thing we're fighting. Because if you think about this pain versus gain discussion, if you think about those tips that you just gave along the way, you just said some of these are simple, but people forget them, right? So we know the neuroscience tells us that our brains are hardwired like a computer where we have the long-term hard drive space and then we've got the short-term RAM memory effectively. And our brains are set up so that when we're not focused on something over a period of time, it will purge information. Our brains dump information along the way. So the reason it's so important for us to go back and revisit our sales calls, have the recordings, go do these game film review sessions that we're doing today is because we ultimately want to defeat that forgetting curve, which I mean, this is something I deal with all the time. I go back and listen to my own calls and I go, hey, look, I teach this stuff and I still forget to do it. I still forget to do it in the real world. So ground rules. If you're going to do this process, you always want to have no more than 2 coaches. We want to try to keep it positive, Lauren, so remember that as we're going through this. Focus on no more than 1 or 2 things and just have some fun with it. So in honor of your now national champion Clemson Tigers, who would have thunk? Did you watch the whole game, Lauren, or no?
No, only a portion of it, not the whole thing, unfortunately.
Ian, you're on the West Coast. You have no excuse. You should have watched the whole thing. I can't. With all these kids under.
You can't stay up that late.
Yeah, my oldest is 7. I fall asleep. So, but I heard it was a heck of a fourth quarter. I wish I had seen it. Probably go back and watch the game tape later on. All right. So heading over here, the context is this is the sales call with Lauren, where she's the seller in this case. Excuse me, she's the buyer. I'm the seller. So when you hear my voice, it's me, and this is a very real sales call with Lauren. It wasn't fabricated. We just took the actual conversation we had. Now, the bubbles you see down here, the comment bubbles as they pop up, these are going to be Lauren's pieces of feedback for me. So as you see those pop up, when you see this bowling lane up here, this is me taking notes more or less on the call. I'm not so much giving feedback to myself as much as I'm just taking notes along the way. So let's listen to it.
And throws up red flags and says, hold on, wait a second. I'm not quite sure we can service the customer.
Hey, Lauren, between, now we've got a couple of different issues on the table. You've got your AE to SE handoff, and AE is conducting good conversation. If you could all have them be as good as that woman who closed like $616K in GP, great. Then you've got your quoting team to customer success problems where if there was visibility in what the heck is the quoting team saying to these people, you could potentially cause some saved problems with customers or maybe some refunds that you wouldn't have to otherwise issue, those kinds of things. What is the biggest business problem? So if you were to isolate it down to one particular conversation that, wow, if we could just get better at that one conversation, we could actually make more profit.
Great question. Probably between what's quoted and how we serve it.
Interesting. Okay, so that's a big problem.
It's a big service delivery problem right now. The question is whether or not it can be solved through a conversation or whether it's a process issue. That's what we're trying to figure out right now. Right? Is it a process issue and a scoping issue, or what is it? But if you go earlier in the shift.
All right, Lauren. So let's pause there. Give me some feedback.
Yeah, so when I went back through and I was listening to this, I was going down a path just because of, if I recall, what I was dealing with that week, which were internal service delivery issues, right? And what I needed to do was pull back up and under the guise of exec vision and say, okay, well, this is to help my sellers sell, right? So those are internal process issues. So at that point in time, yes, that's an internal process, but then what are the pain points facing the sales force that they're in control of, that a seller's in control of?
And this is where I didn't do a good job communicating with you, because what I had, actually, I'll take a step back. I read an article at one point. I can't remember who wrote it. It was one of these sales thought leaders that talked about, in any given conversation, there are actually 3 conversations. There's the conversation that's happening inside of the mind of the buyer. There's the conversation that's happening inside of the mind of the seller. And then there's the conversation that's happening between the 2 of them that's actually audible, that you can hear. And what's interesting about that is you were thinking, because of what was happening that week, you had a very specific thing in your head.
Right.
In fact, now what I'm thinking right now, what I was thinking then is, those internal process issues, we can actually help you solve. You don't know this, though, because what a lot of companies will do is they'll use the game tape, because the tape don't lie. They'll share the snippet of the game tape with that other department to make sure that there's no loss of information when things get handed off from one place to another. So that's what I was thinking is, should we be focusing on that use case, or should we be focusing on the sellers improving?
Gotcha. That makes sense.
That's interesting. Let's keep going.
Sales cycle.
Oh, one more thing just to point out here is, you notice I pulled up the word problem, and we see this kind of scattering of the word problem coming up quite a bit here. So this is like a really dense area that we want to focus on, which is why we started here.
I would say that really the biggest problem is between, we haven't talked about this, but if we're just talking pure sales, it's between sales development and AE. What's happening there? Lack of handoff, lack of definition, lack of really management of the AEs and what they're supposed to do with those conversations. How are they closing? What's the call to action? Are they asking for a second meeting? Have they even scoped a potential opportunity on that call, or were they just talking in circles and didn't throw into anything in particular? Okay, so the inconsistency in the account executive approach, and then also a bit of the handoff from sales to account executive, that inconsistency is costing the company probably more money right now than the quoting problem. Yes, I would say so. Okay. And so this is the thing. What if, now you're never going to have everybody do as well as the woman that you mentioned before, but what if you could have your AEs at least emulating, understanding what the heck she was?
Talk to us about this comment.
Yeah, so that goes back to my first tip or my second tip that I brought up, which was, is that really my number 1 pain point? So why is that breakdown in communication happening between the SDRs and AEs? Where else is that felt within the organization? So back to role clarity, I oversee not only an acquisition team, but I also oversee the lead generation team. So is that just a pain felt by me because I'm frustrated with conversion rates, or do the other sales leaders within the organization, would they agree that that's a strong pain point within our sales process?
Excellent. And this is one of those ones where I'm sitting here going, don't, because you're totally right. And, I did the classic mistake. I went to try to bring not a solution, but a vision of the future. I did a what if. Which is something you learn from Corporate Vision's Power Messaging, which is a phenomenal sales training program. Everyone should go through that at some point in their career. I did what if you could blank? I went a little bit too much towards that solution, towards that image of the future, rather than further developing the challenge that you had articulated, that handoff problem, and if it really is, in fact, a systemic problem in the company versus if it's just like your headache for the week, right?
Right. Yep.
Good.
Absolutely.
All right, I'm going to jump ahead a little bit here, and then we're going to go down to this one.
Doing new rep and a new man opportunities into the pipe. Because if clarity gives you visibility, our viewpoint is that you can quantify it and measure it. And what we're seeing our customers starting to do that too, where they can actually start to measure the execution of the call. Now, the ultimate result metric for a call execution is the.
All right. So talk about this comment.
Yeah, absolutely. So where Steve and I were going is we just Curvature just recently purchased a forecasting analytics tool called Clary. It's fantastic. If any of you are looking for one, I would highly recommend it. But where, from my standpoint, from a buyer standpoint, at this point in time in the call, I'm needing help understanding how are other companies quantifying those soft sales skills, rather. You know, most of what all of us do as sales leaders, we're digging into data, whether it be territory planning, whether it be goal setting for this year, handing out bonuses, creating different comp plans. We're living in data. And even though we all know that there are some things that cannot be quantified, in order for me to push this through the organization and determine whether or not Call Camp and Exec Vision is going to help me coach my reps, I need help understanding how have other companies done this before.
Yep.
Right? So I'm bought into the process of coaching and the concept, and now I just need help defining that.
Awesome. And that's what you arguably got along the way with Clary, which is why you moved forward with Clary.
Exactly.
Yeah, good. All right, well, we're going to jump ahead a little bit further, and then we're ultimately going to spend a little bit of time on this. We're going to play the whole quantify part here.
Conversion rate. Now they're measuring if what's the conversion rate now for those ops to close versus what it needs to be.
And now you're hearing me try to start to have that conversation by saying, what's the conversion rate now for those opportunities versus what they need to be? And we're gonna really focus. The next 10 minutes is going to be pretty dense here.
I should say at that forecastable ops.
Yeah, so this is where it gets tricky. I am literally trying to figure this out right now because it changes based on the product line, right? Me selling hardware versus engaging in a 7-month maintenance sales cycle, those conversion rates are going to look totally different.
Okay, so tell me more about that. Explain that.
So on a hardware, if I'm calling somebody, if I have a scheduled meeting, we're going to lead with NetSure, but it's either you're in or you're out, right? Meaning you either are in the window of exploring a renewal option or you're outside that window. So if you just signed a contract for 2 years, I can't talk about that product line right now. That becomes a lead for later on down the line, so now I have to switch to hardware.
Right, okay. I get it. So it's not so binary. It's more nuanced.
It's nuanced and fluid, right? Which is why we're letting these individuals sell all product lines, because I'm really enduring the scope of what they can sell if I only give them a singular product line. It doesn't work so well.
Yeah, I hear you.
So with that, though, it should be very rare that that a meeting and a scheduled sales call should not turn into a forecastable sales opportunity, right? Everybody's buying hardware, everybody's buying optics. You have some sort of maintenance renewal coming up at some point in time. So it's rare. I would say only 25% of it, 20 to 25% would it be completely unqualified, right? They outsource, they're too locked in with the OEM, you know, it's trying to do business with Google and they can't walk away from Cisco, something like that. So everything else could be qualified, but that's really where we lose visibility is to say, well, okay, what did you pitch on that call, right? Like, did you pitch all product lines? Did you just talk about maintenance and they said my contract's not up for renewal for 2 years? So you said, okay, thanks so much, goodbye.
All right, let's pause there. Now we're getting into some real meat on the problem and some really deeper level of understanding about what the problem is, which is ultimately anyone who's qualified should end up becoming a forecastable opportunity. So Lauren, talk to me a little bit about what were you thinking at this point, and then tell us about your comment.
Yeah, so, you know, when Steve asked me at the beginning of the call what was my number one pain, obviously I said, you know, the SDR to AE handoff. And as we begin to chat more, and I'm sure many of you who have and are asking your sellers to sell multiple product lines, at least from my perspective, this is a problem within most organizations, which is how do we ensure that no stone is left unturned on those sales calls. And that's where we don't really have any visibility. Did you attempt to pitch all of our product lines, or was it just one of them and you deemed it to be unqualified?
And that's why you have this comment here, why is this hard for our sellers? So if I should have asked you about where are the coaching moments, why is that difficult for the salespeople? And then ultimately, what is that costing you? And that's what I'm about to get into. What is that costing the business?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Keep going.
Right.
Right, so unless you're physically on the call with that person, I have literally no idea what you pitched and what you said.
Now that, when Lauren says that, just so everyone listening knows, in our business exec vision, when I hear someone say, unless I'm physically on the call, I have no idea what someone says, that is music to my ears. That's ear candy. But at the same time, you have to be very careful, because sometimes the temptation is, at least my personal temptation, most salespeople I think, the temptation is to go, exactly, that's why we're here. That's what we do. We help you solve that problem. We make it so you can basically be like you're on every call, even though you can't, because you can find the coachable moments. I'm so tempted to jump in with the solution there, but over time and practice, I've done my best to pull myself away from that to have the conversation that I'm just about to have here around the quantification. So let's go here.
It's so nuanced.
Right, and that's probably the difference between, what's her name, just so I have a name to use for her?
Oh, her name's Katie. Yeah, that's the difference between Katie, right? Katie sells all 5 product lines.
Yeah. Yeah.
So she's leaving no stone unturned, which is exactly what we want, but that's hard to teach in a, just to give somebody a script, right? Which is where the fluid and conversational pieces really come up. What questions did you miss? And go back to how you all coached me, right? What questions did you miss? What didn't you ask? And that's the only way you can learn and scale quickly.
Right, right. And they don't even, right now, you don't even have, well, let me ask you, do you have any models? Have you captured any call recordings that you use as part of your enablement for these other reps, so that they can at least learn for what the hell does Katie do? How does she conduct all this stuff?
No, we haven't done it yet.
Okay. And I know you can't answer it specifically, but like realistically, and by the way, you're getting into like how we've structured this deck, to be able to help our customers figure out, okay, where is that metric? Where does it need to be? What have you tried to work? What hasn't worked? And what's your ultimate lifetime value of customers? We're trying to help them realize what kind of money they're leaving on the table here. Because if everyone acted like Katie, you're never going to have to be accurate, but if they were like closer to Katie, sure, how much money does that represent for you guys?
Well, yeah, and that's essentially what I'm modeling out right now, right? So that if...
All right, gang, now we're at the quantification. Now we're at the part of the program where we do the quantification. Now, a nod to someone who gets a lot of nods here on Call Camp, Kevin Dorsey. In fact, he's going to be doing the next one. Lauren, do you know Kevin? He's actually in Los Angeles, too, right down the road from you.
No, I don't know Kevin.
Okay, you got to meet Kevin Dorsey. I'll introduce you at some point. But Kevin Dorsey had this wonderful article that he wrote on LinkedIn called How to Really Sell a VP of Sales. And in that article, he said, as a VP of Sales, I never hear anybody come to me and say, what's your lifetime value of customer? So they never do that process of trying to figure out how whatever sales tool or resource they have could align directly and specifically with getting more customers, keeping more customers, and then what that lifetime value is, how much money that means for the company over a period of time. And that's what I'm doing here is I'm trying to do that. Now, I'm curious, from your standpoint, from someone who buys a lot of stuff and sells a lot of stuff, when I asked you about how does this relate to money for the company, it's kind of a direct question. How does that make you feel here? Did I do it well? Give a little feedback about what you were thinking or feeling when I said that.
Sure. To be honest, we've never had those conversations internally, right? So I'm not even sure exactly how to quantify that. We haven't gone through an exercise of what is the missed ROI for basically because of a bad seller, right? Not even a bad seller, but a seller that hasn't been upskilled enough. So that's actually, when you asked that, I was thinking, ooh, I actually have no idea how to answer that question.
So this is one of those rare moments on Call Camp. You're going to hear me give myself a little pat on the back. I helped you realize an insight you didn't have, and I didn't know that, by the way. I didn't know that until I just asked that question. But so you didn't think of that prior to this call. This was a new insight for you.
Yes.
Okay, and ultimately we would hope that's yes, this is a challenger. So now I see another bubble coming up. So now you will have feedback for me now, and listen to how we do the quantification.
We can get all of these new reps to 75% pace to goal right now, which we haven't been able to do before. That's an incremental $4.8 million in GP.
Okay, hold on. I want to make sure we got that right. So the quantification is if you get all
20, because that's what we've been talking about, right? So let's do 20 reps. I ran it based on 8 because I'm modeling something different, but
20, you're going to get them to 75% of quota.
Pace to goal. Yep, that's $6 million in GP. Net new GP for the organization.
And everyone listening along, GP is gross profit. That's the measure that in the business of curvature matters to them. They're not as interested in top-line sales because they're selling hardware, and the COGS, the cost of goods sold for hardware, is pretty high. So they're more interested in gross profit. Lauren, I'm saying that right, correct?
Yes, you are.
Okay, very good.
It.
Now, you could hear me just like, I started jumping up and down here because now we're getting something very concrete. Give me your feedback here.
Yeah, so I put this comment here because I see my reps do this all the time, which is I get a number and I get excited about a comment, but I don't drill in any further and further clarify, well, why is it 75%? What happens if it's only 60? What does that then mean, right? So is the pain if you don't hit it, or to your point, Steve, is it a gain if you do? So clarifying why is 75% that magic number, it would have been helpful here.
So the reason I was quiet, I'm very rarely lost for words, is I mean, you nailed it, and I'm just sitting here looking at this and going, yeah, you're right. One of our channel partners is a guy named Randy Remerschma out of Atlanta, and he talks about how there is one truth. So he came in and did a call camp for our team here at Foresight and Exec Vision, and in that, some of the people sheepishly raised their hands and said, some of these questions are kind of uncomfortable. Can I ask this? Like, am I allowed to ask this? Especially younger salespeople are trying to figure it out. And he said, is there one truth or are there multiple truths? And they said, there's one truth. Great. He said, run as fast as you can toward it.
Interesting.
And from your viewpoint, did it bother you in some way that I was asking you this?
No, it didn't bother me. But it's just, it's getting me to think about my business in a different way. That am I just, the question always that you need to be asking about your buyer is, are they giving you a response, or is that the honest response? Are they just responding to your question, or is that really the true answer? Because most people don't like to say, I don't know.
Yeah, that's good. All right, let's keep going. That's very good. This is a good one, Lauren. Thank you.
Okay.
Which I'm sort of like using you to build my business case, but that essentially, if I go back to current performance right now, that's as well as somebody who has been here for 8 years is performing.
Oh, really? Okay, that's as good as someone who has been there 8 years. Okay. Interesting. That's interesting. All right. So,
one of the things you'll notice if you're watching this is, and you might be like, this is really wacky. Why is this guy sitting here and taking notes in Salesforce? Couple of reasons. One, I daisy chain my sales calls, so I have so many I can't take them later. And I know it's a little odd. It's a strange technique, and I haven't actually measured this. I don't know for sure. But I can tell you anecdotally that when you type what the person says on the screen in front of them, that gives that person time to further clarify their thinking. And more often than not, I find that buyers will stop me and say, actually, that's not quite right. It's actually this instead. Because most people are more visually oriented than they are auditory oriented. So this is a intentional thing by me, and I know it kind of looks ugly and it's strange. Some people don't like it, if you will. Some people comment like, I can't focus while you're typing. But by and large, it seems to work well. Were you bothered by this, Lauren, out of curiosity?
No, not at all.
That's about as clear I've ever heard as an ROI case. I mean, I'm sitting here and thinking, we've never approached a customer for exec vision and said, let us prove it, we'll take a percentage of that gain. I'm almost tempted to do it because I feel like it's such a clear path for you guys. It's like, it's absurd. I mean, you've never done anything like this before.
No, we haven't done anything like this, and we've really, I mean, the success, the margins are super slim, right? So to give you some more insight, I basically am in the red until year two and a half.
Wow.
And that's if this group is breaking, and I'm not done with the model, but that's if this group is breaking, hitting 100% to goal in year two, right? So we're working with some pretty slim margins because of the support cost it takes to get this team up and running. Now, we're not opposed to being in the red, but the problems get worse if I'm below 75% pace to goal for a year.
Right, yeah.
Right.
You'll lose,
So
you'll lose 100%. You can't go below that 75%.
Exactly, right? So what do we need as an organization to ensure that the managers are set up for as much success as possible? Do they have the ability to actually coach and train and manage and enable all of their net new reps to ensure that at a minimum 100% of your team gets to 75% goal? Those are all the question marks.
Lauren, what are you hearing here?
Well, what I hear is I'm so jealous of anyone on this webinar that gets to sell to salespeople. It's so much easier. And I put this comment in there because I eventually got to the answer of why is 75% pace to goal important to us, right? How does that look from a financial model standpoint? And that's exactly what I was working on to build a new team, and me getting them up to speed as quickly as possible, and getting them to a place where they're hitting this number essentially makes or breaks the trial effort of building an acquisition team.
So here's the interesting question. If you've gotten to this point right now, and by the way, this is live theater, folks, so this is like Saturday Night Live when people go off script and, Adam, Jimmy Fallon starts laughing, and why haven't you moved forward?
Why haven't I moved forward?
Yeah.
With exec vision? Yeah. Honestly, it is, first of all, it was the end of the year, right? So it's closing out the year. We had to get all of our contracts in, goal setting, and yesterday I had 7 brand new people start. So like I said, we just built a team of 15. The first group started in the middle of December, and then the second group started yesterday. So, there is a reality to getting new reps up to speed, and in all actuality, they probably won't have any calls to edit until March or April, right? They've got to start to do business development and go through their full 90 days of onboarding.
It's a good answer, and I'll back off of that, but I thought it would be kind of...
No, I don't mind, but I think it's important because it's, right, the business need is there, but then you get into the internal challenges, right? So you talk about the pain. Well, the pain is real, but now we get into, well, what are the other competing priorities within an organization?
Yeah, and one thing I think I do a pretty bad job of in general is once I do understand the business case, the ROI and things like that, I think personally I need to do a much better job of documenting that so that other decision makers in the company can understand what that is as well and chime in and put their 2 cents into it. I think I don't do as good a job of that as possible. and then you move into the buying process where you start talking about, well, what is your buying process? Who has to be involved? What are all the internal things that have to happen for this to become successful and this initiative to be a win in your organization?
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. I'm not going to play any more here, but that's interesting. You're assuming that Mike is the buyer. That was all related to, I did ask about decision makers right there. And I should have asked you how you purchased Clary. Now that's interesting. So let's spend a minute on that. Just what were you thinking when you wrote that comment?
Yeah, so anytime, I actually ran into this scenario yesterday on a call with one of my new reps, and the buyer, I asked, what does this buying process look like on your end? You have just gotten a new CIO, and he said, to be honest, I have no idea. I've never purchased anything within this organization before. So oftentimes for a salesperson, I found that this is just such an insightful question. If you can better understand what did they most recently purchase and what did that process look like, that gives you all kinds of insight into who is involved, how long did it take, and what did they need to know.
It's a simple question I try to get our sales team here to ask along the way is, hey, what have you ever bought before for the company?
Yeah.
That's beyond like, lunch or Staples. Like, do they even have like a business card for themselves, that kind of thing. And that it will tell you a lot about whether or not that person's been empowered and can make a purchase like that for the company and get something done. Or if they just don't have any juice. There's a couple of, I'm going to give a nod to a couple of sales thought leaders here. One is Josie Ann Fagan, who is, she does inside sales training, and she calls them no pose. And I love that term. No power, no purchase order, no pose. Good term.
That's awesome.
And then the other one is a guy named Steve W. Martin, Heavy Hitter Sales Wisdom. He talks about the bully with the juice. Every company has a bully. Every company has access to money and can spend. They have the juice. Ideally, what you want to try to find out is who is the bully with the juice.
Yep.
So
I like them both.
I get a kick out of that. All right. Well, Lauren,
great.
I appreciate that. Let me exit from here real quick and let's go back. Hey, everyone, comments, thoughts. What do you like that Lauren's saying? Use the question panel here, and we're gonna read some things off. So write your questions down here. Use the question area, and I'm just going to take it right to the last slide. If you like the analysis, if you disagree with the analysis, someone asked, will this be recorded and distributed to participants? The answer is yes. And all call camps are available on YouTube. At some point, we might gate them. We're not sure yet. But as of right now, they're just open and freely available. So if you have any questions, please type the questions in for Lauren, for me, or alternatively, if you have any comments, maybe you would have done something different. Maybe you heard something I did that you didn't like. Go ahead and type those things in there. Lauren, while we see if there are any questions, any final comments on your side? So as it pertains to quantifying pain, are there any final thoughts?
No, I don't think so. I think really what it is it goes back to one of the things that we were talking about in the beginning. And if you are an organization that's quantifying pain, it's making sure that you're not latching on to the wrong pain. And again, making sure that that really is the pain that's felt throughout that entire department. It's just not focused on by the singular individual that you're talking to. And I think that that's really important because we oftentimes as sellers go down a rabbit hole because we unearth some pain and we assume that that pain is felt throughout that entire department. So every call, the more you can qualify and quantify that, the easier your sales process becomes.
Beautiful. Lauren, thank you so much for joining us today. Really appreciate it. Congratulations to Clemson. And finally, if you want to have your call coached by sales experts for free, go to this website, upload a call. There is a brief that I mentioned before, call recording laws, is attached. If you go into this GoToWebinar panel, you'll see a 2-page brief on call recording laws. So take a look at those. What I asked up front, very simple thing you can do. Hey, Lauren, do you mind if I record this so I can focus on the conversation and check my notes later? And everyone says yes to that. Very, 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 very small number of people will say no to that. Most everyone will say yes, no problem. So get a call recorded legally, compliant in compliance with the law, and go to this website here, upload that. I can almost guarantee you, actually I will, I'll guarantee you at some point in call camp we will feature your call and happy to provide free coaching advice and feedback from experts along the way. All right, everyone, happy selling.
Bye, everyone.